welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast, and this is a special. Why is it a special? Well, I'm doing a little interview. My name is Chris, and I am your host, as usual, and I'm joined by somebody this evening who's going to talk to us about a couple of bits and bobs in America, the NASL to be exact. My guest this evening is Jason Shrader. Good evening to you, Jace.
Good evening, Chris. How are you tonight?
I am very well. Thank you very much for joining us and indeed our audience for this evening. I've got a couple of questions here for you, and I thought it'd be really interesting to explore a little bit about what you do for a living and indeed where you're working, the field you're working in. So why don't you tell our listeners about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jason Shrader. I'm 31 years old. I like long walks on the beach, and I work for a professional soccer/football club. I'll almost likely call it football, just for the fact of the European listeners. But yeah, I do work for a football club here in the North American Soccer League, which is the second division of U.S. soccer here in the States.
Good stuff. And obviously a lot of our listeners will probably be familiar with the MLS, or they certainly will have been after the most recent years. But as you say, your league is the NASL. What does your sort of day-to-day working role involve within the club that you're with? In fact, you should tell the listeners what indeed you do with the club and which club it is and where it is.
Yeah, that would help. It's based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We're called the Carolina Railhawks. So we have a deep tradition of Hawks in the area, as well as of trains. We were one of the central hubs, some of the first trains. So the Railhawks was an appropriate title name. And I'm the operations manager for the club, which sort of becomes the catch-all title. So I do a lot of our day-to-day office management. I do our IT services. I do a lot of the stadium facilities managing. As well as I also run merchandise, and then on game days specifically, I'm sort of in charge of, if it's not going on the field or in the press box, I'm in charge of it from a hospitality, merchandise, security, parking standpoint. I'm sort of the main funnel that everything goes through. So quite a busy boy. There's a lot of little subtitles that fall off of that I do. As well as like stadium signage, all goes through me on the execution of that. Once our sponsorship and corporate team sells signage, it's my job to get it put up and figure out the best place for it, depending on what level the sponsor came in at as well. So little things like that I do. I also do run some marketing at the club with we have like pregame festivals to help draw more fans that wouldn't necessarily come to a soccer match. But we try to have a festival centered around. We're very big into the craft beer market here in the area, and we've got a lot of great restaurants. So we try to partner with those local restaurants and craft brew makers, and try to have a few different events before the games each year that fans can latch on to, and they can come for the good beer and then stay for another good football match just after that. So I also am instrumental in planning all of those. So I've got a lot of large hats that I wear throughout the season, involving many different areas. But it's fun and it keeps me busy, and time just absolutely flies by during a season. We just ended our season a few weeks ago, and I literally can remember the first day of the season like it was yesterday. It just flies by so fast with everything I do. So it's a fun job to have, and looking forward to being able to do bigger and better things as I go forward with it.
Good stuff. And how did you mention, obviously the season's just come to an end. We'll talk about the league and how it's set up itself, but how did you get on this season? How did it end up, and what's the plans in the off season, as you call it?
Yeah, so our season did not go exactly how we wanted it to be honest with you. We had a little bit of a different philosophy from a front office standpoint, and with players as well, and went a little bit older with our roster this year than we have in years past, but we also kept it a little smaller, because usually with older players you're buying some more experience, some more pedigree, so smaller roster, a little bit higher pay for the players. But then we had a few injuries that were really key that set us back sort of at key times throughout the year, and sort of couldn't get out of our own way sometimes in road matches. So we ended up finishing and I'll talk about it a little bit more here when we talk about the league as a whole, but between the 2 seasons that we actually play in, we came in, you combine both of those seasons we finished, and we came in about 7th out of 11 in the league. So not exactly where we wanted to be, but we finished the season on a high note with some nice wins, as well as we announced a new owner for the team, a local owner who came in and purchased the team, and his sort of revitalized the fan base. Has promised sort of all the right things to them, and now this offseason's about taking his great vision for not just the Railhawks in the area, but sort of one thing that we focus on is not just professional soccer, but how we can influence soccer at every level throughout the state of North Carolina, and especially within probably the 50 to 75 mile radius outside of Raleigh, which is called the Triangle region, and how we can really continue to grow that and develop that so that we've got not just fans of the Railhawks, but just fans of soccer in general who are going to watch the EPL and La Liga and the great leagues over in Europe and MLS. We want to create hardcore soccer fans who not only support local soccer, but also are engaged in the worldwide sort of the worldwide brand that has become soccer now and how globalized it is. So we want to create those type of fans, and that's really one of his key visions. And so we're trying to make sure that we plan and execute his vision as well as we can this offseason to create a great and excited atmosphere at the games that will bleed over into other areas of soccer here in the area.
Potentially exciting and busy times ahead then for sure.
Yes.
Just
very.
a quick side note on the playing side of things. Any players that some of our audience might be familiar with by chance?
Yes, specifically one who me and you have chatted with before, a guy who sort of made a name for himself at Glasgow Rangers, is in the Rangers Hall of Fame, is Nacho Novo. Is one of our strikers and led our scoring line this year. I think he had 9 goals in all competitions. So really, really great to have a player of his caliber in the area and people who know about him. Like I said, they're really hardcore European fans obviously knew the name whenever he came in, and great to have a guy like that, and really great to have him up front leading our line with his experience. And we'll talk about sort of the overall quality, but he comes in and you can see just the quality that he has on the ball and the efficiency with his touches and in his footwork as well. And great to have that kind of presence in the Triangle to help grow the game here.
Absolutely. You mentioned there about obviously the NASL, the North American Soccer League. Can you explain to our listeners how it kind of works, how it's set up, and how it climaxes as well?
Yeah, so the NASL is the North American Soccer League. A lot of people will remember that name. This is sort of the second iteration of the North American Soccer League, the first one being in the 60s, 70s, and 80s here in the U.S. when you had guys like Pele playing for the New York Cosmos. You guys had guys like he just slipped off my tongue. He played for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers.
I'm no use.
And he's a commentator. He's British. He's English. Played Ray Hudson. Okay, yeah. Yes. Ray Hudson played for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. We had Franz Beckenbauer in the league, and it was this great time when not a lot of people knew, but we were packing 80,000 people into Giant Stadium in New York for Cosmos Strikers in the late 70s. And sadly, that league at the time just did not have the financial model to succeed here in the States, and they were spending money faster than they were making it, and so the league collapsed. The second iteration started back in 2011 and has been very successful now. We just added 3 new teams this year, and Miami FC, who just signed Alessandro Nesta as their head coach, also has Maldini. Is one of their owners, as well as Ricardo Silva. He's huge into rights deals here in the Western Hemisphere, up and down from South North America. We added Puerto Rico FC, who's got Carmelo Anthony of the NBA as their owner. And then we now have Rayo OKC, who is, I want to say it's Rayo Vallecano. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, Tom would probably put me right on this, but yeah, Vallecano, yeah. Whoa.
As long as I'm pronouncing it better than Danny, that's all I
difficult.
really care about. But yeah, Rayo Vallecano actually bought the stake in a franchise for Oklahoma City, which is sort of in the central of the U.S., and they're going to start, all 3 of those teams start play at some point in 2016. The league is really structured based off of 2 seasons. We start play in late March, very early April, and we'll finish play whole year in the end of October. And we'll split that up into 2 different seasons, though, and we'll have a very short, what we call spring season, that may be about 10 to 12 games, and it's very much a sprint. And the winner of that spring season will get a spot into the 4-team playoff that we have at the end of the year. Then we'll have a 2 to 3 week break, nice little international break, usually timed with the World Cup or something. Players rest and recoup, and then we'll come back in and we'll have the much longer sort of European-style traditional longer season of the fall season that will start usually the first week of July and then, again, run through the end of October. So, again, you've got the sprint up front. It's really the way they've split it up into the 2 seasons has made the spring season extremely exciting because every result absolutely matters. You can't afford to fall behind by 6 points in a 10-game season, really. It's almost impossible to make up. So every single game carries a lot of weight and value to it since the winner of that spring season goes on to a spot in the playoff. The next spot in the playoffs is determined by the fall season winner. And then the next 2 spots, what they'll actually do is combine the spring and the fall, and you'll have a combined season table, very similar to the European-style table. And the best 2 records combined after those 2 championship winners will make the 3rd and 4th seed into the playoffs. So let's say the Carolina Railhawks won the spring season and we won the fall season, then they would take the next 3 best overall records into the playoffs that way. So you'd always have 4 teams in there, and then the 2 highest seeds with the best records or the winners of the different seasons would go to host the playoff games. And it's a one and done playoff game. Best top seed hosts, and it's a knockout style sort of playoff. So it creates a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz around the league. And if there are any hardcore U.S. fans listening here, they probably know that the New York Cosmos just won the league last Sunday, actually 2 days ago, Sunday. And for those who maybe have asked where these 2 players went, Marco Senna plays for the Cosmos. He's retiring after this year, and he goes out a champion, as well as, the Real Madrid famed Raul, also on that Cosmos team, goes out a champion as well. So very, very exciting, but also very different from what the Europeans are really used to in a single table. It's throughout the year, and it's just based on points. We as Americans, we like our playoff systems. We like sort of the randomness of them because, you could still be the 4th place team and win the trophy. Last year, the 4th place team went on to the final and I want to say was level until about the 85th minute in the final last season. So obviously it's still got a good chance, and that's what everybody plays for, is to just be given a shot because you never know what can happen when you got that shot in front of you. So very exciting league, really growing, and that's the great thing. It's not structured like MLS. MLS is what's called single entity owner, where the actual league itself owns all the rights to the teams, and then they franchise it out to the true owners who have to pay a fee to get in. Our league, you still have to pay a fee to get in, but that fee covers all the rights to the team. You own it 100% outright. The league has no ties to it anymore, other than the fact that you report, or the league commissioner reports to that team owner. And MLS obviously has a wage structure and a pay scale and a hard salary cap, whereas our league does not. We could spend, if we wanted to, $50,000 a year on players for the whole team. The Cosmos could spend $10 million a year on players. There's no hard budget, no hard minimum, no hard maximum. So it's really what your owner wants to put in and invest on the field. And the great thing is the Cosmos, obviously they're New York, so they're a big city, and they've got a large budget. But at the same time, you've got teams with smaller budgets like Ottawa, who had a great second half of the season, won the fall season very handily, playing some really good football, and it almost came back on the Cosmos in New York at the championship. So it's not always about the size of the budget, but really about how the team gels and comes together, and it makes it for a really, really exciting sort of time when you have some teams who you just think there's no way they can make it. Their budgets are so much smaller than the heavyweights in our league, like Minnesota United and San Antonio Scorpions, Tampa Bay Rowdies, and the New York Cosmos. And you've got guys like Ottawa and FC Edmonton and Indy 11 and the Carolina Railhawks battling these guys week in and week out, and you never know which way the results can go. This year was the first time New York had won in Carolina since they'd come in the league 2.5 years ago. So we'd always beaten them down here, and sadly Raul turned their fortune for them back in July. So it was a little depressing on the night, but still, as a soccer fan, it was pretty cool to get to see a guy like Raul come and play.
It must be frustrating as well. I don't know if you're a video gamer, but not being able to play with your team in like a popular certain video game, that must be annoying as well.
Yeah. So the funny thing is obviously getting to know some of the players. A lot of our players have played at some point in MLS. So if you have, no offense to our players, but if you have an old enough version, you can usually find them somewhere among the 60s or the 50s on the MLS teams, and so it's pretty fun we've played a couple of games. I played with him against him, in said game. So yeah, it's pretty funny, but yeah, hopefully, there's a growing sort of groundswell in the U.S. to have the NASL put into that game, so that fans, those teams, as it continues to grow and have a wider footprint throughout the country, can grow and play with those teams and develop an even closer sort of relationship and a deeper sort of fanhood and fandom with those other NASL teams.
So that's usually how you find, and you just get sort of to quote the podcast, a hipster team, and see if people start following. That's how it works. So,
yes,
you mentioned obviously in the NASL, sort of the step down or the step below MLS. The standard of the MLS is often criticised, and as are the sort of the pitches and how it's laid out. What kind of standard is the NASL? I know it's a difficult question to answer because you're not comparing, but if you compare it to, say, the 3 levels or the 4 levels of English football, how would it compare? What kind of level would it be at?
Yeah, I to be honest with you, and the great thing is our stadium has some of the best groundskeepers in the country. We have our version of the FA Cup in the U.S., which is called the U.S. Open Cup, it's the exact same format as the FA Cup. And last 3 before this season, so 2012, 13, and 14, my Carolina Railhawks beat the LA Galaxy in Raleigh each year. So sadly, Beckham didn't travel a couple of those times. The last game, U.S. soccer legend Landon Donovan actually called us out and said, we're as the Galaxy, we're tired of losing to those guys. And he finally came here and played against us, and we still his butt. So it's the level, at least from MLS to NASL. Yes, there is a level. A lot of our guys are good enough to get sort of on the end of the bench or to be spot sub for MLS teams, whereas a lot of those guys would rather come down here and get full playing minutes, just because they want to continue to play and keep their minutes so they can keep their form and see if they can't increase their level of their game. And then you've got guys like Raul who come over and choose to retire with the NASL instead of the MLS. He did have some MLS interest, chose the New York Cosmos over it. And so it's very good to see that again. I said Nacho Novo, Marco Senna, guys like that who decide to come over and ply their trade here. And, it's not that much of a drop. I'm not quite sure where it would. I don't watch too much third division English football right now, sadly. I just don't have too much time. But I probably would put it just under the championship in like a League One, most likely for the level of play. And playing surface wise, though, I was talking about our groundskeepers and the LA Galaxy effect, and the LA Galaxy actually said that one of our practice fields was just as good as their regular field. At the same time, you go to different complexes, and so the grass may be not as nice, different style, different climate. A lot of the clubs play on turf fields. So the one thing that the Railhawks pride themselves on is, and you can ask any player in the NASL this, and they'll tell you this outright, no matter what their team is that the best pitch in the league is the Carolina Railhawks at Wake Med Soccer Park. Again, just a huge testament to our grounds crew. And we've got about 8 different fields out there as well that we use for training that are kept up just as nicely. I've honestly, to be honest with you, I played pickup out there a couple of times, and you go on a golf course and it's not manicured as nicely as something that you're out there playing pickup on. I was like, I'll never play on a nicer field in my life. I'm just going to enjoy this while I can. So it's really nice to be able to have that, especially as a home field, because it does present us with a great way to play. We can play a nice attacking option, play the ball at the feet, and play on the ground and play out of the back a lot better than some of the other teams with a turf field where you may not always get those bounces like you want. So it's really good. The standard, it's very close to MLS, to be honest with you. And some of the markets may just not be as big as MLS, or as the fan base may not be as strong right now as MLS, but it's growing. And that's the key is we want to continue to grow as a league and continue to try to be a great entertaining option and a great form of football for people to watch in the U.S. to grow not only here locally, but around the country and in Canada, where we also have teams. So it's one of those things where, there are giant killers like the Railhawks who can go out and beat the LA Galaxies, another sort of not so humble brag, but the Railhawks went to the quarterfinals of the Open Cup 2 years in a row, as well as a lower division team. We got the farthest both years. So it's one of those things where probably if we were to play those teams 10 times, they would most likely beat us 7 to 8 times. But we take our chances very well as a lower league, and we're doing really good at stepping our game up. Not only off the field with the front office and professionalizing the league and things like that, because we're so young compared to MLS, but we're also doing a really good job of making sure that we're competitive on the field when we play those, because that's what the players want. They want to be able to go out and say that we can beat anybody anywhere, and they're doing a good job of that here in the U.S.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
You briefly touched on the sort of the club itself. Where do you see them in sort of the future of the landscape of US soccer / football? Where do you sort of see, or what's the goal?
Yeah, that's that's one of the things that we get asked all the time by our fan base is, what's the great thing with our new owner, a guy named Steve Malik, is he wants to just really make sure that first of all that we're getting as many fans out to a game as we can. We want to make sure that everybody in the triangle, whether you play football or not, that you know about the Railhawks, that you're coming out to all the games. And then you never know. I mean, you never know where soccer could go in this country. There's a lot of debate right now about promotion and relegation in the U.S. Is it right now? We need to have it now. Is it too early? The biggest thing I think, whether talking about MLS or NASL, USL, the third division, is the fact that soccer is growing at such a rapid rate in the U.S. Partly because of the Premier League and its coverage here on TV. Unlike folks in the UK, we actually can watch every single game every single week, no matter what. And that's really helped spark the growth, because kids can now, whereas they couldn't 10 years ago, now it's so much easier to go watch Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea on a Saturday morning. Go out, play your youth club game, come back, and now you've got Bundesliga matches on Fox and all these different leagues that we can watch now that we have access to that we didn't before. And that's important. And the one thing with the Railhawks right now is we've got a lot of positive energy. And the one thing we want to turn that into is we want to just make sure that no matter where U.S. soccer goes and football goes in the next 10 to 20 years, we just want to make sure that we're relevant and that we're leaders in the forefront of making sure that we've got a great game day atmosphere for our players, for our fans, for hopefully television audiences across the world. And that we're continuing to show this great game to younger generations for years to come. So it's hard to say right now, even where the future of soccer as a whole goes and football as a whole goes in the U.S. But it's a great time to really be involved with it. I was actually watching a video today on as me and Kris met because we're Arsenal fans. I was watching a video on Arsenal player today with Lee Dixon about his commentating. He's one of the commentators on the NBC coverage for Premier League games. And just to hear him talk about the growth, a former Arsenal player and never thinking it would be where it is today and how it's growing and just, it's the most played youth sport in the country right now. And it's been that way for a long time. Previously, though, kids just didn't know that you could get paid to do it that well, which now they're finding out they can. And they're finding out that they can come home and watch it and support teams, elsewhere in the world who may be a slightly better quality than MLS. But I tell you, MLS and NASL are slowly but surely catching up with the rest of the world with quality.
Absolutely. I just, you kind of almost segued perfectly into my next question, really. So nicely done. It's almost like you knew it was coming. But you touched on the idea of sort of how football was taken off in the US.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an impact do you think it's made since the success of the most recent World Cup campaign? Obviously, the side getting through to the quarterfinals and really were one performance away from dispatching with Belgium and going even further.
Possibly Josie Altidore hamstring away from going further.
Sunderland fans wouldn't have never thought that, but
yes, they wouldn't know.
But yeah, I mean, is it? I mean, it's difficult to say it'll ever be a major sport in the US because you've got obviously American football, basketball, baseball, even hockey, ice hockey, I guess. But how much of an impact has it made, and do you think it's growing?
Oh, it's by leaps and bounds, especially not even necessarily just the men's World Cup, but the women's World Cup final was the most watched soccer game ever in the U.S. history. So there's a thirst and a hunger for it, especially when we're good. And I think the really good thing is sort of the key, ultimately, not trying to be sexist or anything, and I love the women's team, but unfortunately a lot of people will only start to follow if the men's national team is doing well. Into the quarterfinals, if you were to ask just the casual soccer fan here in the U.S., they go, oh, that's pretty. But to get the people who are really sort of still on the sidelines looking in, we're going to have to go a little further than that. And I think Jurgen Klinsmann, who's our head coach, is, he sees that and he understands that. There's a lot of pressure on him because he understands and his top level, Sunil Gulati, the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation, understand that, everybody's sort of waiting for the U.S. to sort of have their moment. And when's it going to come? And is it going to be this cycle or the next cycle? And I think it's almost to the point now where because of the exposure to the European leagues, because our youngsters know that they can go somewhere else in the world and get paid a handsome amount of money to play a sport that they love week in and week out, and the pay is getting much better here in the U.S. as well, that they can make a really good living from it. I think you're going to start to see the athletes who maybe used to choose baseball, basketball, football, those pure athletes that we have are going to start to choose soccer, I should say, a lot more, as opposed to American football or like ice hockey or something. Just because it's such a global game. And the big thing, one of the interesting that we always think about is, how do we find the right talent? We're such a large country, so many different regions, so many, how do we do that? And that's the one thing why I sort of agree with Jurgen Klopp. We need to sort of centralize everything and take it out of the regional hands a little bit and make sure that, everybody's getting the same training, whether it's in California or North Carolina or New York or, Washington State, so that everybody can come up together. But I think you're really going to start to see a lot of people, and like I said, a lot of younger players start to come from the U.S. and go over to the soccer academies in Spain and England and Germany and start to make a name for themselves, because it's something that they're starting to pay a lot more attention to. And the one thing is, once they get their parents hooked on it, that's going to be one of the big keys, because especially in the South, where American football and specifically the NFL and college football are so big down here, whenever you show parents a paycheck through their kids, they're usually going to try to cash in on it. So try to live vicariously through them as much as they can. If they see that there's still a contract to be had and good money to be had in soccer, I think they're gonna continue to push their kids to go in that direction. Especially the one big thing is the NFL has had such a controversy with the concussion protocol that participation levels have already dropped like 10 to 20% on the youth game just in the last 5 years. So it's one of those things where a lot of those kids and a lot of the sports that we have, baseball has been on the decline in TV ratings and participation. And as those sports start to sort of hit their peak and then maybe come back down off that bell curve, it's going to be the bell curve for global football and soccer to really take off in the U.S. And that's why I still think at some point in my lifetime I will see the men's national team win a World Cup. I might be an old man with a much grayer beard than I have right now. But I do think it's something that's possible because a lot of the kids realize, one, it's just a great sport to watch. It's very fun. You look at a baseball game, and a baseball game is 4 hours long almost all the time. Whereas I can go watch the Arsenal. I'm in and out in 2 hours. Especially with the quote unquote short attention span of millennials. It sound like an old guy. But yeah, you look at the demographics in the country of what's trending towards that, and it shows a nice positive upswing to where soccer could easily become one of, if not the biggest sport here in the U.S. Maybe not in 10 years, maybe not in 20 years, but definitely down the line.
What I should say, it was a little bit of a kind of a, well, I say it's a secret. It's not really a secret. I got a lot of stick during the last World Cup because my beloved Sweden didn't make it to the World Cup, and I piggybacked onto your mighty nation, and yeah, got
lots of room on this bandwagon.
Absolutely, I'm quite well known for not particularly liking my my national country of England national team. So I followed the US, and like you said, players, I think playing abroad, it definitely helps, and there are some really good players coming through that'll only help grow the game potentially.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me into my final question. Based on your experience on sort of the US or US soccer or football market at the moment, you touched on it there. You said you could see them winning a World Cup. I share that. Where do you see the US football soccer wise in sort of 10 years time?
In 10 years, I think we're still going to be pretty close. You got to think about the kids who are going to be in that group right now. Average age is 25, usually around World Cup players, 25, 26. So they're 15 and 16-year-olds right now. Right now, I do think there's still a little ways that we need to go at that age level in development. But I think we're on the right track, and I think we'll be doing pretty well, if not reaching, instead of just, before for the U.S. it was, can you qualify for the World Cup? Can you qualify for the World Cup? The last probably 15 years, I said, can you get out of the group stage? Can you get out of the group stage? At that point, I hope it's, can we get to a semifinal? Let's see what happens if we get to a semifinal. I think that's where it's going to go. It's going to be a slow progression. A lot of people have expected a change to come overnight. And I don't think that's right. But I do think in 10 years that we're going to be sort of one of those teams who's knocking on the door of a semifinal, sort of cycle on, cycle off there. One of those teams who, usually you look at them and you go, oh, okay, they've made it out of some tough groups in the past. They'll most likely make it out of this group. Depends on who they draw in the, in the knockout round and then the quarterfinal. See what they can do from there. I think that's probably where we are. So I think in the next 10 years, probably 2 World Cup cycles, you may not truly see a big difference in our results. But what you'll most likely see is a big difference in our quality and those kids coming through and being able to continue to nick results probably where we should in 1-0s to Italy, beating Germany here in the U.S. Little things like that we can do that are going to start to become more consistent themes with this team. Like I said, and then see if we can't stick around for a semifinal run or two.
It's exciting times, I think it's fair to say. It's certainly a growing, as you said, a growing sport with growing good players. So we'll keep an eye on that. Before I let you go, I want to just ask you a question that I'm going to ask to all of our guests. I want to ask you for your favourite football memory, and indeed your favourite hipster player of all time. 2 loaded questions. I didn't give you any preparation time, but
okay. I do actually have 2, and they're both actually Railhawks related. Yes. So the first one was being pitch side when in extra time we slotted past the LA Galaxy keeper to go up with Landon Donovan and Robbie Keane on the pitch and beat the Galaxy at home to advance in the U.S. Open Cup. Was one of the I try to remain very professional during our games, and I understand that I'm here to let the fans root, but it was one of the few times in my career with the Railhawks that I've literally just jumped up and down with joy uncontrollably for about 5 minutes as I realized we had beat them, with all their star power. They brought everybody, Gazi Zardes, Robbie Keane, I said Landon Donovan, sort of the whole crew was there that we were able to beat on that run. And my favorite hipster sort of footballer is a guy who used to play with the New York Red Bulls. Now he's back down with the Carolina Railhawks. His name is Austin Deleuze. He's a left-footed midfielder, plays out on the left, really good with the ball at his feet. He's got one of the best diagonal balls probably in the U.S. And we've sort of got a speedy winger on the right side that he'll just play a ball over the defense, and there's nothing they can do with a guy named T. Shipolani streaking on it. But yeah, Austin Deleuze has probably one of my favorite Thierry Henry stories as well, because he was at the Red Bulls when Thierry was there, and said one of the players had his car had just broken down. It was like a 1980s like Honda Accord had just broken down, and he was not knowing how he was really going to get back and forth from practice and training. And I think later that week Thierry took him out and bought him a Mercedes. So he said Henry was one of the most demanding teammates he's ever had, but he's actually one of the nicest people he's ever met, one of the most genuine people he's ever met. So really cool stories there. But he's one of my favorite players to absolutely watch, because he's, like I said, he's great on the ball. He's a shorter guy. He's got a little bit of a Napoleon complex. Loves to give the ref an earful. And I think if you have FIFA 11, you could still play with Austin Deleuze. So if you still got that sitting in a cabinet somewhere, he should be lower down on the Red Bulls roster. But he's a great human being, really nice guy, decent friend of mine, but a really sort of underrated footballer that we have. If you want a more hipster footballer that I really like, I don't know, Seamus Coleman, because of his name. Is that fine? Is that good?
That's fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I've just thought of a question I'm going to actually just add in, because you've kind of made me think about this. Give us the name of one player, and it doesn't have to be a Railhawks player. It could just be a player of US descent. One player that you think's worth keeping an eye on in the next 2-3 years, whatever it may be.
Man, that's really good. It's tough, and you're probably going to agree with me on this, actually, because I know you're a fan of him as well. But I think he's still got some good development to go. Would be a guy named Mix Diskerud on the U.S. national team. It's just one of those guys who sort of a central line playmaker who can sort of spread the ball around and drive at people with the ball at his field and in midfield as well. Probably one of the guys who's going to become a key guy for the men's national team and their success in the next 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Actually, absolutely. Him and Zardes, I think, are the two that probably to watch
as
well.
Yes.
Fabian Johnson as well. But...
as much as we hate to say Yedlin, we can't. He's done some really good things, and I like where he's going. I just don't like the fact he's
bags of pace. Yeah,
he's on loan right now.
He might go back and. Or I think he'd suit Bundesliga football like Johnson did personally a lot more, but
yes,
I think.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Well, just remains for me to say to you, thank you. Do you want to just give the Railhawks a plug, sort of Twitter accounts, websites, anything like that?
Yeah. It's CarolinaRailhawks.com, or you can find us on Twitter. It's at Railhawks. And you can check out all of our stuff. And the good thing is we're starting to ship to Europe now, our merchandise. So if you want to get real hipster and go with an NASL team that you want to support and have as your kit, we'll be more than happy to ship some stuff over for you, so you can support. We're one of the only teams that wears orange and blue. Although two of the teams that came in our league this year sort of stole our colors.
And
but that's a whole other
story. From experience, it is a lovely kit. I can confirm that. I have seen it, so there you go.
Oh, thank you.
Good stuff.
Thank
well,
you.
Jason, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure that will open the eyes of many of our listeners who have no idea about US soccer or indeed NASL. So thank you very much for that. We wish the Railhawks well, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point when you're in season next year.
Awesome. Thank you, and thanks to everybody. And check us out. We're a fun team. We're a good local team. So if you really, you care more about how the local impact of football has in an area, that's what we're all about, and that's what we like to support and continue to grow. So if that's sort of your thing, and if it's not your thing, maybe it should become your thing, and you should support us. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me on, and I love being able to spread the word of not only the Railhawks, but just what football is doing in the U.S. as well, because it's, like I said, it's really exciting times.
No problem at all. Thank you very much again, and as always, if you want to follow us, we are at the FH Podcast. You can give us a follow. We will return with our usual podcasts, and again, thank you very much, Jace.